Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we will be making mandu, which is Korean pot sticker. You can boil them, steam them, fry them, and I'll show you how to make it from scratch. Even the wrapper, the pea that you need to wrap the pot stickers in. And also we will also be making Japanese style gyoza. When my parents had a restaurant in Hawaii, they had a Sapporo style ramen shop in Salt Lake City in Hawaii, and we used to make these by hand and make it from scratch, except for the skin, the pea. But today we'll be making it from scratch because some of you might not have access to an Asian grocery store where you can buy it, but you can buy it because I've seen it at the Albertsons down the street. I went there and there's a whole section of vegan section, and they actually had a bunch of these the pot sticker skins, the wonton, gyoza. They had a whole variety of vegan ones, but it is good to make your own because when I read the ingredients, it was vegan, but there was all kinds of preservatives in there to make it last longer. So if you don't want to put that in your body, I'll show you how to make it from scratch today. Okay? So let's get started, and we're going to get started with the dough. Okay, so we have all-purpose flour here. I'm using organic all-purpose from Costco. I'm going to put in 3 cups of all-purpose flour. Make sure when you weigh or measure your ingredient, especially flour, that you level it off so that it's more accurate. Like if you put 1 cup of flour like this, that's not really 1 cup. That's 1 1/4 cup, or between 1 1/4 and half. Then we're gonna take 1 cup of the chapsalgaru, which is also known as mochi flour. It's the glutinous rice flour. This won't fit in here, so I have to use a spoon. The glutinous rice will give this pot sticker wrapper that kind of like chewy flavor. Like it'll give a good chewiness to the dough, as well as flavor. Okay, so we have a cup. Then we're gonna take 1 1/2 teaspoon of salt. The salt in the recipe, when you see salt in baking recipes, especially bread or pasta dough, the salt gives it helps the gluten form so that your dough will have structure. So once we have that, I'm gonna add 1 1/3 cup of water. So we go with 1 cup of water, then 1/3 cup of water also. So you can do this by hand, but I'll just use a mixer because I have it ready. If you don't have a mixer, yes, go ahead and you can mix this by hand. We're using the paddle mixture because this dough will not fully come together. So what we're doing right now with the paddle attachment is that we're trying to distribute the water as much as we can into the flour. So this dough will actually not come together with the machine. And so if you're making this at home and it does come together, that means you have too much water in your dough. So for 4 cups of flour and 1 1/3 cup of water, you're going to end up with about 2 pounds of dough. Okay, so that's pretty good. We just want the water distributed evenly. And sometimes you'll have to add a little bit more water to your dough depending on the condition, like your humidity in the room. It's pretty dry in here, but my flour was in an airtight container, so it also depends on how well you keep your ingredients, how airtight you keep it. So we have, you see, like the dough was crumbly at first, and then I just bunched it together and it came together. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this dough and we need to let it rest. So you see how some parts are still dry and it's not getting incorporated? When we let this sit, and we're gonna do it in a plastic bag. When we let this dough sit in the bag like this, what's gonna happen is that the moisture in the dough is gonna kind of like get absorbed into even the dry flour, and you'll have a nice dough to work with. So if you do this by hand, you're gonna let this rest for 30 minutes, and then you're gonna need to knead it. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the mixer with the pasta attachment right here. So when I use this machine, I'll show you that the extruding or the rolling of the sheet will actually help knead onto itself. Okay, now that the dough is made, we're going to go ahead and make the gyoza filling. So we're gonna start with the Japanese pot sticker first. So we're gonna take half a head of cabbage. We're going to take the core out. Then we're going to cut it into wedges because I'm gonna put this through my food processor with the grater attachment. So if you don't have one of these food processors, you can use this. You can use a grater by hand and do it manually. But since I have the equipment, you know, I'm not gonna exert myself grating. So I'm gonna put this on low. Okay, now that it's grated, we're gonna take it and put it into a bowl. And this is what you want, kind of like shredded cabbage. It's shredded, but it's in little pieces, almost like desiccated coconut, like if you ever made macaroons, coconut macaroons. Okay, now that we have the cabbage, we're going to salt it because we want to draw out the moisture. So I'm putting about 2 tablespoons of salt, and I'm gonna mix it in well, and we're gonna let it sit. So as it sits, it's gonna draw out the moisture, and then we're gonna need to squeeze all that water out. We'll just let this sit. So while the moisture is coming out of the cabbage, we're going to be cutting some vegetables for it, for the filling. So I have an onion here. We're gonna take I would say about 2/3 of this onion. No, to the amount of, yeah, 2/3. We're gonna take 2/3 of this onion, and we're gonna dice it fine. Again, when you peel your onions, make sure you get all that fibrous skin. And sometimes part of the good onion, like this part is, I'll show you. This is a pet peeve of mine. So you see how like this looks like perfectly good to eat, but then it's fibrous here. I'd rather just kind of like peel that part off to be safe. Like if you want to keep this part, that's fine, but make sure you take all the fibrous part, because no matter how much you chew, the fibrous part is not going to break down the skin. So we're going to finely dice. Ooh, this onion's making me cry. Okay, so if you want the onions to not make you cry, one tip is to have a really nice sharp knife, and then if you keep this the onion in the refrigerator for about an hour, the onion cells with the vinegar kind of like mellow, like it won't burst as much as you're cutting, so you less likely to cry when you're chopping onion. But don't forget that you had that onion in there, because you shouldn't really keep onion in the refrigerator unless if it's cut up like this. So after all the onions are cut, you're gonna take about 6 green onions. And you're gonna finely dice these also. Put your onions in. Then we have that Asian chive right here. I'm going to trim the end off. That's very fibrous. And we're going to chop it finely also. So typically in gyoza, they put some kind of ground meat, and usually it's ground pork. Some people do it with chicken. But at the restaurant in Hawaii, the ramen place, we used to put pork. And back then, even when I did eat meat, I didn't eat pork. So I just didn't feel like eating pork for some reason, and red meat. I avoided those two. I ate chicken and a lot of seafood. But you know, one of the reasons why I became a vegan was because at first it was for my dietary reason. I have these skin issues where you see the dark spots here. They used to flare up and itch all the time. And I've been to the doctor when I had health insurance and asked, you know, what the diagnosis was. And I always thought it was eczema, but they said it's not eczema. They said it's some kind of allergic reaction. So after thinking about it for a while, you know, I've seen a lot of videos on Facebook about animal cruelty and all that. So I decided to be a vegetarian. Once I cut out all the animal protein, my skin started feeling better. And then I was like, well, let me give up dairy and see what happens. And I haven't itched since. The only time I get itchy is when there's a lot of dust. And so I haven't had gut issues either, because I'm lactose intolerant. So I used to eat a lot of dairy. So I used to just pay the price. But now there's so many alternative to dairy that, you know, I'm grateful that my health is a lot better. And I feel good about not, you know, contributing to animal, you know, that's my main thing right now, the animal cruelty part. But, you know, everybody has their own reason. So I started being a vegetarian / vegan for health reasons at first. Okay, so now that we have all the onions cut up in here, we're gonna add ginger. So I'm gonna peel with a spoon. And I'm gonna use a microplane, and I'm gonna put in about a teaspoon of ginger. Maybe 2 teaspoons of ginger. Yeah, 2 teaspoons of grated ginger. So when we made the meat version of this, the ginger acted as like a kind of to disguise that flavor. You know, that really like the porky flavor. Sometimes it's overwhelming. So that was the function of the ginger. Then we're gonna just put in 2 cloves of garlic. If it didn't have the garlic chive, I would go a little heavier, maybe like 1 more of garlic. But since we have the Asian chive, which has a kind of like a garlic flavor, we don't want to overwhelm the pot stickers. Okay, now that we have the garlic and ginger in here, we're gonna add miso. We're gonna add about, this is about 2 tablespoons. We're gonna add about 2 tablespoons of miso. We're gonna add some freshly cracked pepper. This one, you can put it to taste. If you like a lot of pepper, put a lot of pepper. If you don't like as much, you don't put as much. I put in about half a teaspoon in there. Then we're gonna put in mirin, which is like the sweet cooking wine or cooking seasoning, and we're gonna put about a tablespoon. And soy sauce. We're gonna put about 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. So we have the onions and all the seasoning in here. What we're missing is our protein source. So I thawed out the Vietnamese ham we made the other day for the spam musubi and the banh mi. So I'm just gonna roughly chop this. And you can tell that this will provide a nice texture for the pot sticker filling. If you wanted to use the food processor, you could. Okay, this is the texture I want, so I'll put it in here. We're trying to mimic ground pork, kind of like texture, so not too fine. So as you can see, the water is starting to come out of the cabbage. So what we're gonna do is squeeze the water out. So if you don't squeeze the water out of the cabbage, what you're gonna end up with is all this in there. And when you're trying to make your gyoza, the filling will be so loose that it'll be like so messy and it's gonna be really like watery. So this is a very important step. Look at all that liquid that came out. Okay, discard that. Give this a stir. I almost forgot the sesame oil. We're gonna put about 1.5 teaspoons of sesame oil. You don't want it too overpowering, you just want a hint of sesame oil. That's the mistake I see with a lot of people cooking with sesame oil, that they put so much of it, is that that's all you taste, and it should just enhance the flavor. Okay, so once it's all mixed up, I'm gonna need to taste it to see if I need to add salt or other seasoning, and make sure all that miso is worked into the filling. You could also just use your hand. It's a lot easier, and you can find onion pieces like that that's not chopped up all the way. Okay, so once it's all mixed up, if I made this with meat, what I would be doing is taking some of it and cooking it on the frying pan without anything, just a little bit of oil to see the seasoning. But since there's nothing in here that's gonna make me sick if I eat it like this, I'm just gonna taste it. That's good. Yeah, perfect. So it still needs to be fine, because we're not like traditionally you put an egg to bind it, but since we're not using any animal products, I have this. There are a lot of vegan egg replacers out there, but what I like to use is pea protein. I'll put some pea protein into a little cup, about a tablespoon of the pea protein. And konjac root. So this stuff kind of like when you add water to it, it puffs up. Like it soaks up all that water and it looks kind of gelatinous. So I'm gonna add about a teaspoon. And then about 2 tablespoons of water. Just gonna mix this in, and it's gonna form a paste. I'm gonna take this and put it into my pot sticker filling. Because if you think about it, an egg is just, most of it is protein in the whites. And a little bit of fat and other nutrients that's in the yolks. So I'm gonna mix this in. And so when this cooks down, there's still liquid in the vegetables that will come out, and then the konjac root and the pea protein will kind of absorb that and turn it into, like, it will kind of firm up as you're cooking. Like if you cook cornstarch and water, it's gonna firm up to make a not so liquidy consistency, so your pot sticker won't be all filled with like liquid. Okay, so now that the filling is done, we're gonna work on the dough. So the dough has been sitting here for about half an hour, and you'll see that it's a lot softer. And moisture went all over the dough. And it's actually feeling a little bit on the wet side, so I'm gonna put a little more flour on it. Okay, so the dough has been sitting for 30 minutes and it's feeling a lot softer, and I know that it needs a little more flour. So I'm gonna divide the dough in two. We're gonna use this one with the machine, and this one I'm gonna show you how to make it without a machine. So if you don't do it with a machine, you need to knead it a little more. To activate the gluten in there. Oh, and you're gonna do this for about... Okay, so the dough is nice and firm, and I know that there's a lot of gluten, and I don't want to tear a lot of the dough. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let this rest for another 10 minutes after I knead it, after the 30 minutes. Okay, so if you're gonna use the pasta rolling machine like I have here, you can also do this one with the hand crank pasta machine. but this is so much more convenient, especially if you already have a stand mixer. So what I do is I kind of flatten the dough a little. I'm gonna put it on low, and the thickest setting is 1. And I'll show you what I mean by the dough kneading it. Because it looks a little bit rough right now. It's not smooth. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a little bit of flour because the dough is a little bit wet. And I'm gonna keep putting it into the machine to kind of press on itself and roll it out, which kind of makes the dough smooth and activate the gluten. Okay. Then like if it gets too wide to put it through, I folded this in the lengthwise, and then I put it in the opposite direction. And I do this a few times, and the dough kind of like, it's pushing onto itself and it's pulling the dough out. So you're actually, you know, working the gluten. And the dough feels firmer, and I can feel the gluten being activated. Okay, so it's almost the width of the pasta roller, so I'm gonna fold it into quarter. And instead of putting it this way, I'm gonna put it this way. So now that I'm satisfied with the texture and the smoothness, especially if you look on the side, I'm going to start lowering the number, or making it thinner. So from number 1, I went to number 2. And I have it on the low setting because if you have it on high speed and you pull it through too fast, the dough will start tearing at the end. The edges here, it will start tearing. Like you'll see, like here, you get a little bit of that, but it will start tearing like crazy on the side. So now I've gone to number 3 and I'm pulling it through. And then we're going to end up with number 4 for the gyoza. So I have this is about a 4-inch round cutter, like a pastry cutter. I know that I'm going to have to fold this in half and run it through again because I know this isn't wide enough for this cutter. I'm going to lay this. Fold it in half. And then I always put the seam side first, because if you do it the other way. Okay, now that I got the width that I want, I'm going to put it through one more time. turn my mixer off. I'm going to lightly flour. Then I'm going to take my pastry cutter and make sure you place it firmly, that it goes right through. It's important you do this on a flat surface, so if you have like a wooden counter, it might warp a little, or if it's like a laminate countertop, it might do that also. This is a nice hard surface which is flat, so you're always going to get a nice cut when you push right into it. And make sure you flour the top, so that way when you lay it on top of each other, it won't stick together. Okay, so that's how you would do it with the mixer. And then once you have these made, I just keep it in a plastic bag like this so that it won't dry out. So when you make this recipe, I go down to number 4 on the pasta rolling machine for the pot stickers, the gyoza pot stickers. If I'm doing the mandu, the Korean one, I like it a little thicker, so I go to number 2. So this right here is the dough that we needed, and it's ready to go because I can feel it. It's loosened up a little. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it in a cylinder. And this part will kind of help. If you had a scale. And I have it in grams. So one pot sticker is 14 grams. Now if I try to get 14 grams by guessing, that's 11. That's about 14 right there. So I have one lined up like that and kind of like gauge it as the sample. I seem to like 11 a lot, so we'll see. I went a little more. Yeah, there we go. So I'm gonna cut them all about that size. This is the baker slash pastry chef in me that's doing this. Okay, so now that we have this one was a little small, so we're gonna, that's 17, so perfect. Take a little and put it here. These are good. 17, 23. So you get the idea of how to portion it so that you're not spending, like you're not doing one by one and weighing it out. You just kind of like guesstimate and then you adjust as you're weighing it. And it will, this process will go by a lot faster that way. Okay. So once you have I'm not gonna do all of it because I need to save some for the mandu. So once you have your dough portioned out, I'm gonna keep it wrapped up so it doesn't dry out. You're gonna take a little bit of flour, and you have this tiny little rolling pin. You're gonna roll it out, and you're gonna roll it and turn the dough to keep it the round shape. Because if you just stay in one spot and roll it back and forth, you're just gonna get a long piece of dough. It's important to have enough flour on your working surface so that it doesn't stick. So this way will be a little more rustic because it won't be perfect circle. But you can practice to make it, you know, nice and uniform. So once you have a nice, evenly rolled out pot sticker wrapper, that's it. Put it right here. Go on to the next one. Kind of like shape it. Flatten it with your palm to make it round as possible. Add a little flour. Okay, and you repeat the process. So, you know, if you have the machine, it's a lot faster and more efficient, but this is a more traditional way of making pot sticker pea. Okay. Gonna make one more, and then we're gonna move on to shaping it. Shaping the gyoza. Circular motion, make sure there's enough flour so the dough's not sticking. I turn the dough and try to maintain that. And then there's a spot here where I can just work on like this to push it out. So you can make this ahead and make a lot of it and keep it in the freezer like this. Make sure there's a good amount of flour in between the layers so that when it thaws and you try to peel it, it won't stick on itself. Okay, so now that we have enough, I have some I made ahead of time right here. Okay, oops. See, you gotta be careful. Sometimes they stick, and you just gotta be careful. So I'm gonna start with making the shape. So out of all the ones that I've made beforehand, I've only lost two, one in each end. That has to do with the moisture, the condensation in the bag. So the condensation will fall onto it and then it'll get too soft like this. And when you try to pull it apart, it'll just kind of rip and break. So two, not bad. Okay? So now we have the pot sticker filling, the gyoza filling, and the pea. Okay? The fresh pot sticker skin that we just made. So what I'm gonna do is I need to also have a tray ready. I'll take the pea, the skin, onto my hand like this. Then I take about a tablespoon and a half, and put it right into the middle. So shaping the gyoza, you pinch the end like this, and what you're doing is you're gonna rub some of the filling right onto the skin like this as you're pinching, and you're pinching it on top, halfway from the first pinch, like this. And so this is a traditional shape of gyoza. And it's gonna form like a half moon shape like this. So you see the nice pleating here, and it's gonna stay flat on the bottom like this. I'm gonna make one with the pre-made. Now it's important that you don't overfill, because when you overfill, your filling is gonna bust out of the seam and it's not gonna look nice. So again, start from the corner, right in the middle. Then you're gonna take this and fold halfway in between, and make sure that there's no big air gaps in the. See this one, I went a little heavy with the filling. If that happens to you, just take some out. It's been a while since I made these, so if you want to make it a little nicer, you can kind of like reshape it on top like that. And how I'm placing this is I'm placing it right next to each other, but without them touching, because if they touch and you put it into the freezer, if you're not going to use it all, you need to do IQF, individually quick frozen. So if they stick together and then you try to loosen it up, the dough will stick together and fall apart and you'll have holes. Okay, let me try. Yeah, it's been a while since I made these. About 2 months, 3 months. This one's a little ugly, but you get the idea. This looks more like Chinese pot sticker because the gyoza is supposed to be a little longer. I think it has to do with the fresh dough though, because when I usually make it with the store-bought dough, here's one more like gyoza, gyoza shape. So we'll come back when I make all of them and I'll show you how to cook them and to make the chili oil to serve with it. Just gonna do a few more. Yeah, this one, the ones that I made ahead of time and that was chilled, I'm getting a little more of the gyoza shape. You see, that's more like a Chinese dumpling shape. This one's more like the Japanese style. The key is the amount of filling that you put in there. You don't want to put too much and you don't want to put too little. Okay, so I'm back. I've shaped all of them. So this recipe makes about 50 pieces of gyoza. So we're gonna make the chili oil that goes with the pot stickers. It's really simple. You just get a pan nice and hot. And you're gonna add the sesame oil to it. I'm making a little bit of it, and then you're gonna add, like, this is the Korean chili powder that I have. Sorry, I grabbed the wrong one. This one's the ground chili, which is fine, which we don't want. We have the coarse chili powder or chili flakes. This is the same one we used to make kimchi, but a lot of Japanese use shichime, which is 7 flavored peppers, chili flakes. So what we're gonna do is just make sure the chili's heated through and turn it off and put it off to the side. So while that's cooling, so when this cools, we're gonna strain it. We're gonna cook our gyoza in here. So I'm just gonna add 6, because that's a good amount of portion for me to eat for lunch. We add 6 pieces like this. And this is the way we used to do it at the restaurant. So we're gonna add about a cup of water. We're gonna turn it on high, put a lid on it, and we're gonna steam this. So once the chili oil kind of cools off, you're gonna strain it. And so at the restaurant, we used to serve it like this. We used to have vinegar and soy sauce at the table in the restaurant, and we would just give them some chili oil when the gyoza is finished making, and the customers will put their own vinegar. So they'll put a little bit of vinegar and a little bit of soy sauce to make the sauce. So that would be the dipping sauce. So if you have extra sauce left over, you can keep it in an airtight container at room temperature for about a few weeks. If you want to keep it longer, you can keep it in the refrigerator up to a month. So you see how the water is boiling and it's cooking the pot sticker all the way through. So in about 5 minutes, we're going to drain the water and finish cooking it. Boiling for about 4 minutes, and you can see that the dough has turned from opaque to kind of translucent kind of color. You know, when the dough is finished cooking, you'll know. Then we're gonna take the lid off. We're gonna carefully drain the water. And try not to disturb the pot sticker, because if you loosen it and you drain the water, it's gonna fall out of the pan. So on medium high heat, I'm going to let this cook with a little bit of olive oil drizzled on top of it. So you'll start to hear it sizzling. And you're gonna cook it for about 3 to 4 minutes, depending on how high and evenly your pan distributes the heat. So the main thing is timing it, you know? You don't want to disturb it before it gets too brown. And you don't want to burn it. So I would say about 4 minutes of medium heat. So I'm gonna check. It's almost there. It's not quite golden brown. It's almost there. Okay, so I'm gonna turn this off. I don't want it to burn. And I'm gonna take this and place it like this on the plate. These are borderline burned, so you need to be careful when you're cooking these. Okay, perfect. And this is how we used to serve it at the restaurant. Except in this version, no animal had to die. And then with the dipping sauce on the side. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make this delicious pot sticker with me. I'm gonna taste this. I'm gonna put a little bit of sauce. Ooh, huh. So delicious. And that chewiness of the pot sticker skin, because it was handmade with the rice flour in it, the glutinous rice flour. Oh, the texture and the flavor is really delicious. And then the filling flavor, you get that little umami flavor from the miso, and then you taste a little bit of ginger, garlic, and all the onion flavor, the green onion, the chives, and the white onion we diced and put in here, plus the flavor of the vegan ham that we made, the che. So delicious. All comes together. It has that savory flavor. It's hot, but I can't resist eating it. It's so delicious. And the chili oil that brings the heat, the right amount of heat, not too spicy, but at the end you get that tingling on your tongue from the chili oil. So when you heat up sesame oil with the chili, what it does is that the flavor of the sesame oil kind of mellows down when you heat it up. And when you put the chili into it, the chili kind of absorbs that flavor, and then it still has a little bit of nuttiness from the sesame seed oil, but the chili oils come out, and then it gives it that now nice round flavor. So delicious. I hope you enjoyed making these gyoza with me, and I hope you learned something. And like and share this video with everybody, and subscribe to my channel. I'll bring you a lot more videos on Asian cooking as well as Western cooking, because I also like to cook chili, but I do it vegan style with I make my own fake ground meat to give it that texture when you're eating chili. And also I do gumbo, and I make my own vegan andouille sausage. So there's more videos to come. Please like and subscribe and share with all your friends, and let me know what you think, and let me know if there's a particular dish you want me to make vegan that's in Korean or any Asian country. I love to make different types of cuisines, and one of my favorite is Thai food, and I love making papaya salad at home. The only thing I don't do is put fish sauce in it. So anyways, I'm gonna keep rambling on if I don't stop myself. And I'm gonna enjoy these pot stickers, and stay tuned for the next video. I'm gonna be making the mandu, which is Korean version of the pot sticker. That's a little more labor intensive, but it's delicious. Stay tuned.